Welcome to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Invoice Training Series, presented by the Employer Reporting, Compliance, and Education Division. This video will provide information on the Employer Pension Spiking Invoice. From the 2013 General Session, Senate Bill 2 passed, creating Kentucky Revised Statute 61.598. This statute administers the pension spiking laws for employees with a retirement date from January 1, 2014 to the retirement date of June 1, 2017. A pension spike occurs if there is a greater than 10% increase that is not the direct result of an approved exemption in the employee's creditable compensation when compared to the immediately preceding fiscal year. Kentucky Public Pensions Authority will only contact an employer about a pension spike if that spike impacts the member's final compensation for retirement benefits. If a pension spike is discovered that impacts the member's final compensation, the employer will receive a pension spiking packet. The packet includes a Form 7111 letter advising that the spike has been detected, the Form 7112 letter that breaks down the calculation of the spike, and a Form 6481, which the employer can use to provide the bona fide promotion or career advancement information. Following this contact, KPPA will create an employer pension spiking invoice for one of three reasons. First, if the employer does not dispute that the spike was caused by something other than a bona fide promotion or career advancement. Second, if the Form 6481 included in the packet and any supporting documentation were not returned by the employer within the 60-day time limit. And finally, following the review of the properly submitted Form 6481 and supporting documentation, the KPPA Legal Division determines that the spike was not due to a bona fide promotion or career advancement. A representative of the KPPA legal team will issue a final determination letter regarding their decision, and 30 days later, KPPA will generate the invoice. The employer does have the right to file an administrative appeal in writing with KPPA to dispute the final determination within that 30-day time period. The Employer Pension Spiking Invoice can be accessed through the Invoice module of the Report tab in Employer Self-Service. To view the invoice, click the Invoice Number hyperlink. The invoice will be a multi-page document containing the billing voucher and calculation page for a single employee of your agency. These invoices will never contain multiple employees. On the first page of the invoice, the Employer Information section provides the name, employer code, and address for the employer. The Invoice Details section includes the invoice number, due date for payment, the member information for whom the invoice is on, and the amount due. Following the invoice details are instructions on how to pay the invoice, which an employer can do either electronically in Employer Self-Service or by mailing a check or money order. If the employer chooses to pay this invoice by check or money order, they need to include the bottom section of page 1, which is the billing voucher, along with their mailed payment. The remaining page of the invoice begins with the same employer information and invoice details sections as page 1. Following that is the last 5 fiscal year analysis section, which provides evidence of the pension spike that caused the invoice's creation. The cost calculation details section contains the calculation information, so the employer can see how the amount due was determined. The first part of the cost calculation details section is the final compensation based on the actual salary reported versus the revised salary as calculated by KPPA. The revised salary is the reported salary capped at the 10% maximum increase allowed between each fiscal year. After determining the final compensation, the next step is to calculate the employee's actual monthly benefit and the revised monthly benefit using the retirement formula. To determine the cost of the spike for the employer, once the difference between the actual monthly benefit and revised monthly benefit is found, that difference is multiplied by an actuarial factor. If there are multiple agencies named as the employee's last participating employer, the plan cost is divided equally among them. Once the invoice is issued, the employer has 12 months from the date of creation to pay without accruing interest. The due date can be found under the invoice details on page 1. If the employer fails to pay the invoice within the 12-month period, interest will begin to automatically accrue on the invoice starting with the 13th month at a rate of 0.625% per month. This interest will continue to accrue until the invoice is paid off. Kentucky Public Pensions Authority cannot reduce or remove the interest once it begins to accrue. Thank you for viewing the Employer Pension Spiking Invoice Training. If an employer has questions regarding any of their employer pension spiking invoices, they may contact their ERCE team through the employer hotline.